Konnichiwa, my name is Logan Charles Luna, and this video is going to be about The Crow. So, The Crow originally came out as a comic book written by James O'Barr in 1989. O'Barr's fiance had died in a car crash. She was hit by a drunk driver, and while grieving for the loss, James O'Barr created the character of The Crow, who was someone who was murdered and came back to avenge not only his own murder but the murder of his fiance. And the Crow comic ran until 1992, well, the original run, because as most comic book mainly Western comic book fans know, as long as something belongs to a publishing company, like as long as they have an IP, they're gonna keep running it. They're gonna keep bringing it back. And that's why The Crow, not only the comic, but the film franchise has so many sequels. We're only going to talk about one of them. However, today we're only going to talk about the direct sequel to the 1994 Crow film starring Brandon Lee. And Brandon Lee is the son of Bruce Lee. He was born February 1st, 1965, and he died on the set. Well, that's one of the things. He didn't actually die on the set of The Crow. He was shot on the set of The Crow and died in the hospital. He died March 31st, 1993, and his death could have been prevented, could have been avoided. And when you actually look into the production of The Crow and how much of a nightmare it was, you can start to see that there was so much negligence and just a lot of let's hurry up and get this done, which really was a disservice to not only Brandon Lee's performance, but in many ways a disservice to the cast and crew, who also suffered multiple injuries. There was a truck that ran into the set one day, and they just cleaned up and continued filming. Like, people almost got ran over, and they just carried on like nothing happened. So, being very negligent and not checking the gun to see if it had live rounds, just handing it to the actor, it's very eerie how similar a situation has happened now with the Alec Baldwin thing and his movie Rust, or whatever it's called. But yeah, Brandon Lee's death was very preventable, but it happened. And upon his death, his fiance, his mother, his sister were all contacted about what's going to happen with the movie. They wanted the film to come out because they wanted Brandon Lee's legacy to live on. Like, Brandon had given so much time and he had put his everything into this performance, which is what people remember it for. Now, the scene where Brandon Lee gets shot, it was rumored that it was in the movie. No, they made sure that they destroyed that as soon as, he passed away. And they're never actually going to show that to anyone, because that would be extremely disrespectful. Like, it's sad that something like this had to happen for the crew and the studio to finally be responsible for stuff. But the movie came out, and back in the 90s, the only actual successful comic book movies were Superman and Batman. Everything else was a made-for-TV movie or didn't do that well. But The Crow managed to stand out on its own. This would later result in other films like Blade and Spider-Man becoming massive box office hits, getting sequels made, and that's what they wanted to do with The Crow. So they made a direct sequel to the first movie, bringing back old characters like Sarah and tying them into Vincent Perez's character Ash. And they sort of wanted to do like this whole Day of the Dead thing in Los Angeles. hence the title The Crow City of Angels. But that didn't really go anywhere because studio interference caused a lot of rewrites. The director, the writer, the actors were just thrown all over the place. And in the end, you kind of got a mess of a movie. There are little hints and notes here and there in the final product where you can kind of see what direction they wanted to go. However, studio interference stopped them from going in that direction. And another tragic thing about The Crow was this was unrelated to the movie, but the actress that played Callie in The Crow was also the Yellow Ranger in the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series, and she had died in a car accident. Which, yes, it is a major coincidence, but it had nothing to do with the production of the film The Crow. However, now with all the talk of the reboot, with all the talk of the film being cursed, because a few years ago, Jason Momoa was the actor to be in the new Crow film, and the director, blanking out on his name right now, they both left the Crow reboot for different reasons. But they left nonetheless, and the Crow reboot has once again just been in limbo. Working in production and filming so many pilots and movies that are considered like testers for certain markets to see if there's any interest. If this movie breaks even, then we'll try a bigger movie next time. And there's so much stuff that I worked on that just kind of got put in limbo, on the shelf, and in some unfortunate situations, the project was tied very strongly to an actor, just like this Crow reboot was tied to Jason Momoa, and the actor either pulled out or unfortunately passed away, thus causing the project to also just completely be in a state of limbo and gone. And well, that's life. Move on to the next thing. And after almost 10 years of that, I just kind of walked away and started doing my own thing. So the frustration of studio involvement, I take that personally every time I hear and see how detailed, like, these people will go out of their way to kind of shoot themselves in the foot. Like, you put so much money and invest in these creators, and then you mess up whatever they were doing. A perfect example of that would be the Star Wars sequels. I'm trying to remember the titles of the Star Wars sequels. The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and Rise of the Skywalker. Yeah, those three movies, you could obviously tell, were hit hard with studio notes and hit hard with creative differences. But most importantly, the middle installment of that, The Last Jedi, it feels like it's a totally different movie. Like, it doesn't connect in this trilogy at all. Whatever happened in this movie feels like, to borrow a term, anime filler. Like, it's part of the story, but it's not actually part of the story. But then there are stuff that happened in The Last Jedi that greatly affect the third movie. And it's just all over the place. So that happening to the Crow sequel led up to this boring, lazy formula for the other Crow sequels to just be guy gets wrongfully murdered and then comes back for revenge. His girlfriend got murdered too. That's the basis of all the Crow sequels. There's some Crow sequels that have very creative ways of putting the makeup on the character. Like in the third movie, The Crow Salvation, Alex actually gets his makeup burned onto his face via a mask they put on him during his electrocution. And The fourth movie, The Crow Salvation, kind of has some of the laziest way to get your makeup on. This dude just drew on his face with a Sharpie after rubbing house paint on himself. So I will say the first two Crow movies have the best makeup execution, with Brandon Lee's version of The Crow putting on his Beyonce's makeup to honor her. And in the sequel, Sarah, who is an adult now, even though the movie's only like 2 years apart, they're trying to make it seem like it's been 10 years since Sarah's been involved with this stuff. But Sarah puts on the paints from Ash's son, and that's where Ash gets his makeup. Alright, that's going to be the end for this video. Usually I draw along to this fan art, but I kind of finished it when I was trying to make the video the first time. It's the day after Halloween. I wanted this video to come out like on Halloween, but you know, stuff happens. So this has been Logan Charles Luna. If you want to follow me on social media to keep up with updates on my manga, fan art, it's at LCLX25, both on Instagram and Twitter. If you want to support my artwork and my manga, then check out my Patreon. There will be a link in the description. And sayonara.